beautiful souls, Pisces. This love reading carries such a deep emotional energy. It feels like someone is finally beginning to realize they can't keep running from what they feel for you anymore. And even if this person seems quiet right now, their silence has never really been empty. Behind everything, they still think about Pisces, constantly. Your smile, your gentle energy, the way you make them feel understood, even during moments when they still don't fully know how to open their heart and receive love the right way. But the question is, why did they allow fear, pride, and outside pressures to pull them away from the one person their heart never truly forgot? There's this feeling that this person is going through a very deep emotional awakening right now. And the more they try to suppress these feelings, the more they realize this connection was never just something temporary. The Moon card comes through with such a quiet energy here, but somehow it reaches the deepest emotional layers inside this person. Pisces may not actually hear from them right now. No long messages, no clear confessions, but in some way, you can still feel that they're thinking about you. It's almost like, underneath all this silence, there's still an invisible emotional thread connecting the two of you, something neither of you has fully let go of. This person has probably tried to keep themselves busy, focusing on work, daily responsibilities, life. But the moment things become quiet, their mind drifts back to Pisces again. Maybe it happens while driving alone after a long day. Maybe it's when their phone lights up late at night, and for a second, they unconsciously hope it's you. Or sometimes, it's just an old song, a familiar scent, a random sentence someone says. And suddenly, something inside them softens. And what's interesting is, Pisces doesn't live in their memory in a chaotic or overwhelming way. Your energy feels gentle, soft, calming, but it stays with them for a very long time. It feels like sitting beside a warm yellow light late at night in a quiet room, the kind of place where they can finally let their guard down after carrying emotional pressure nobody else really sees. The Hermit card shows that this person has been pulling inward quite a bit. They're not someone who easily reveals everything the moment emotions appear. In fact, there were moments when they tried convincing themselves this was just a passing connection, something that would eventually fade with time. But the more they try to distance themselves, the more they realize their feelings for Pisces are still there. There's something very unusual about this connection, because Pisces makes them feel seen in a way that feels incredibly real. Not surface-level attraction, not just chemistry, but the feeling that someone understands parts of them they've never really been able to put into words. And for someone who's been hiding their emotions for a very long time, that feeling is both comforting and terrifying at the same time. The Ace of Cups carries such an emotional energy here. It feels like this person's heart is slowly softening after being closed off for so long. They're beginning to realize Pisces doesn't just bring love into their life. You bring healing too. A very quiet kind of healing. You're not trying to change them. You're not forcing them to become someone else. It's simply your presence that makes them feel lighter somehow. And maybe the part that confuses them the most is that the closer they get to this energy, the harder it becomes to pretend they feel nothing. Emotions they thought disappeared a long time ago are slowly starting to come back to life again. Pisces, sometimes the deepest connections don't begin with dramatic moments. Sometimes they begin through the smallest things, a look someone never forgets, a short conversation that stays in their mind for days, a sense of peace they can't seem to find anywhere else. And honestly, I think this person is slowly beginning to realize your presence in their life was never as simple as they once tried to believe. The Two of Cups carries such a quiet but incredibly deep energy here. This doesn't feel like the kind of connection that starts off loud or explosive right away. It feels more like two people unconsciously touching each other's inner world in the most natural way. There are moments when they're working, talking to someone else, or simply sitting quietly staring out the window, and suddenly, Pisces crosses their mind for no clear reason at all. And strangely enough, this connection doesn't drain them. It does the opposite. The more they think about Pisces, the calmer they feel inside. Like finally finding a quiet place for their heart to rest after a long day filled with noise. And for someone who's spent so much time holding everything in, that feeling is rare. I feel like this person is starting to pay closer attention to their own intuition now. There are moments when they can feel Pisces energy very strongly, even when the two of you aren't speaking at all. Almost like they somehow know when you're sad, when you're pulling inward, or when you miss them more than usual. The High Priestess shows a connection here that's very difficult to explain through logic alone. Sometimes they wonder why a single look from Pisces is enough to stay on their mind all night long. Why some people pass through life so quickly, but you somehow remain in their thoughts for such a long time. And the more they search for answers, the more they realize this goes far beyond ordinary attraction. It's much deeper than that. Pisces carries an energy that makes people feel safe enough to return to themselves. No pressure, no pretending, no need to prove anything. And this person may not have felt understood in such a gentle way for a very long time. The Star card comes through like a very quiet kind of healing. I don't think Pisces entered their life to create more chaos. It feels more like you appeared during a period when they were emotionally exhausted, when they had already started questioning love, questioning sincerity, questioning whether anyone out there could truly see the real version of them. And then this connection appeared, slowly, softly, but deeply enough to begin melting some of the emotional walls they've carried for a very long time. And maybe the most confusing part for them is that Pisces never tried to force them to open up. You simply existed in your own energy. But somehow, that gentleness makes them want to become more honest with their own feelings. Maybe they still haven't said everything yet. Maybe there are still silences between the two of you that haven't been filled. But the quieter things become, the more this person realizes not every connection can touch the heart this deeply. And sometimes, the softest feelings are the ones that stay with us the longest. And maybe that's exactly why this connection has started touching parts of this person they buried very deeply inside themselves a long time ago. The Devil card here doesn't feel frightening to me. It feels more like someone who's been stuck in old emotional cycles for far too long. They're used to holding everything in, used to protecting themselves through distance, through silence, through pretending they don't really need anyone too much. And over time, those emotional walls became the only thing that felt safe. But Pisces somehow changes that. There are nights when this person lies awake for hours. Not necessarily because they're trying to think about you, but because the quieter everything gets, the more clearly they can hear their own emotions. And what confuses them the most is that Pisces never pressured them to open up. It's actually your gentleness that makes it harder for them to keep running from themselves. The Five of Cups carries a very deep sense of regret here. I feel like this person has gone through relationships that made them lose faith in being loved gently. Maybe they were abandoned during vulnerable moments. Maybe they opened their heart once before and were met with disappointment instead. And from that point on, they slowly learned how to shut their emotions down before anyone else could hurt them again. But Pisces unintentionally touched the softest part of them. You may not notice it right away, because this isn't someone who easily reveals everything on the surface. They tend to hide emotions behind calm behavior, behind short conversations, or behind periods of distance that are difficult to understand. But internally, they're carrying a lot more than they let people see. And it almost feels like every time they try to step away from this connection, their heart quietly pulls them back toward Pisces again. The Death card here feels less like an ending and more like a very quiet emotional transformation. This person is entering a phase where they can no longer avoid the fears they used to run from. The fear of emotional dependence, the fear of not being enough, the fear that if they truly love someone deeply, they'll end up being the one who hurts more in the end. And Pisces, sometimes healing doesn't arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes through very small moments. A conversation that makes someone feel heard. A look that makes them feel like they no longer have to pretend to be strong all the time. A presence gentle enough to soften a heart that's spent years protecting itself. I think this connection is helping this person understand something very important. Some people enter our lives not to force us to change overnight, but simply to make us want to become more honest with our own emotions. And the deeper they fall into this connection, the more they realize something very strange. What they fear the most may also be what their heart has been searching for all along. The Six of Cups brings through such a strong feeling of longing here. Not the kind that feels dramatic or impulsive, but a quiet kind of missing someone that shows up during the most ordinary moments of the day. Sometimes they'll randomly see something that reminds them of Pisces, an old song, a familiar road, or even just a sudden emptiness that appears while life around them keeps moving like normal. I feel like this person is slowly starting to live more honestly with their emotions instead of trying to control everything the way they used to. But that also makes them hesitate. Because the more deeply they feel this connection, the more they realize that if they open their heart again, they don't want something shallow anymore. The Knight of Cups shows a very deep desire inside them to come back toward Pisces in a more genuine way. No more emotional games. No more pretending to be cold or distant just to hide the softer parts of themselves. It almost feels like they're learning how to be honest with their own heart again, little by little. And maybe what weighs on them the most is the amount of time the two of you lost in silence. There were things they probably should have said sooner, feelings they shouldn't have hidden for so long. And the more they reflect on it, the more they regret the distance that existed, simply because both of you were trying to protect yourselves. Pisces never made them feel like they had to become someone else in order to be loved. And for someone who spent so much of their life emotionally bracing themselves against pain, that touches them much more deeply than they probably show outwardly. Temperance comes through with such a soft energy here. I don't think this connection is trying to force everything to happen quickly. It feels more like two souls slowly learning how to find balance again after carrying so much emotional chaos for so long. Some wounds can't be healed through just one conversation. But sometimes, simply knowing there's still someone out there who looks at you with genuine gentleness can make the heart feel a little lighter already. This person seems to be reaching a point where they want to fix things through sincerity rather than beautiful words. They want Pisces to feel that these emotions are real, even if they still don't fully know how to express everything perfectly yet. And maybe that's why lately, they think about Pisces more during the quietest moments, when the noise fades away, when life slows down, when they can no longer distract themselves through work or other responsibilities. And in those quiet moments, they're beginning to understand something. Some people don't enter our lives just to pass through temporarily. Some connections, the more they mature, the more they make us want to return to each other as the most honest version of ourselves. But maybe the hardest thing for this person right now isn't whether they still have feelings or not. It's whether they're truly brave enough to finally say the things their heart has kept silent for far too long. The Two of Wands shows this person standing in the middle of a major emotional shift. It feels like they've been stuck in this space of hesitation for a very long time, caught between keeping a safe distance from Pisces or finally stepping toward this connection as a more honest version of themselves. And honestly, I think what's been weighing on them the most lately is the realization that they no longer want this connection to remain just a collection of unnamed feelings. There are nights when they stare at their phone for a long time, wanting to send something, then deleting it, wanting to speak first, but worrying things may not feel the same anymore. Worrying that after all this silence, Pisces may have already learned how to live without them. But no matter how hard they try to stay logical, their heart is still moving. The Eight of Wands carries an energy that feels like, after a very long pause, something inside this connection is finally beginning to move again. Not necessarily through some huge dramatic shift overnight, but more like emotional ice, slowly starting to melt little by little. I feel like there are still so many things left unsaid between the two of you, and honestly, some misunderstandings here seem to have grown more from silence than from actual hurt. As this person becomes emotionally more mature, they're beginning to understand that sometimes the most important thing a connection needs isn't trying to read each other's minds from a distance. It's being gentle enough to truly listen to one another. And Pisces makes them want to learn that. Not because you force them to change, but because around your energy, they don't feel the need to defend themselves so much anymore. It's almost like Pisces can see the softest parts of them, but never uses those vulnerable places to hurt them. The Judgment card feels like a very deep awakening happening inside this person. They're beginning to see this connection differently now, not just as temporary emotions, not just attraction or feelings they can't explain. They're starting to wonder if some connections enter our lives to help us grow emotionally in ways we never expected. And Pisces, sometimes one conversation can change so much. Not because it instantly fixes every problem, but because, for once, two people finally become honest enough to say the things they've held inside for far too long. I feel like this person is slowly trying to step out of the emotional shell they've lived inside for years, slowly, but much more genuinely than before. They're beginning to understand this connection can't really grow if both people remain silent, constantly trying to guess what the other person feels from afar. Maybe right now, everything still feels unclear. Maybe there are still emotions that haven't fully found words yet. But the energy here no longer feels frozen the way it once did. It feels more like after listening to rain outside the window for a very long time. Someone finally walks closer and quietly admits they never truly forgot this connection. And maybe what this person is learning to face next isn't only their feelings for Pisces, but whether they've become emotionally mature enough to truly hold on to a connection this deep. The Wheel of Fortune feels like a sign that something very quiet is shifting inside both of you. Not the kind of change that happens all at once in some dramatic moment, but more like the way a person slowly starts seeing life differently after going through so many emotional experiences. Things they once thought mattered so much don't really move their heart the same way anymore. And then Pisces appeared, not loudly, not trying to force their way into this person's life through anything flashy or overwhelming. But somehow, this connection makes them want to slow down and actually feel things again, to love more honestly, to build something that isn't only beautiful in the beginning, but peaceful enough to last over time. I think Pisces unintentionally helped this person realize that mature love doesn't always arrive through intense emotions. Sometimes it shows up in the way someone makes you feel lighter after exhausting days, in the feeling of finally being able to be yourself without constantly needing to perform in order to be loved. The Empress carries such a soft energy here. Pisces may not fully realize it, but your presence has healed this person more than you probably know. Not through grand promises, but through patience, through understanding, through the way you somehow make them feel that no matter how chaotic the outside world becomes, there's still a quiet place where their heart can finally rest. It feels like this person is beginning to imagine a more peaceful version of the future whenever they think about Pisces. Not a love built only on emotional highs, but a connection where two people can grow together, heal together, and slowly learn how to love each other more gently. At the same time, I still feel like both of you are moving through a phase that requires emotional stability and time, because sometimes a deep connection doesn't only ask for love. It also asks for enough emotional maturity not to hurt each other through old fears and unresolved wounds. The Ten of Cups brings such a warm feeling toward the end of this reading. It feels like two people finally learning how to sit beside each other without hiding so much inside anymore. No more trying to read each other's minds in silence. No more loving from a place of constantly fearing loss. Instead, this feels like the kind of connection where both people begin to feel lighter simply by walking beside one another. Pisces, some connections don't enter our lives to create more chaos. Sometimes they arrive to remind us that the heart is still capable of loving in a soft and genuine way. And honestly, I think that's what this connection is slowly opening inside this person. Not only deeper feelings for Pisces, but also a completely different understanding of love, closeness, and the realization that sometimes the most beautiful part of a connection is simply feeling emotionally safe beside someone. Maybe everything is still unfolding very slowly right now, but sometimes the slow set connections are the ones that reach the deepest parts of the human heart. The moon closes out this reading with a very quiet feeling. Not every emotion needs to be fully explained right away. Some connections simply make us feel more deeply, listen to our intuition more closely, and slowly begin looking at the emotional parts of ourselves we once tried very hard to avoid. And maybe that's also what Pisces has brought into this person's life. Not just love, but a gentle enough space for them to finally become more honest with their own heart. The star carries such a soft healing energy here. It feels like after moving through so much emotional confusion and heaviness, both people slowly begin to understand that love isn't always about who was right or wrong. Sometimes it's simply about whether two people still want to treat each other gently. And honestly, I think the most beautiful part of this connection is that even when things feel distant at times, there's still something emotionally real holding the two of you together. Not loud, not overly dramatic, not something that constantly needs words, but real enough to slowly change the way both people understand love in a more mature way. The Fool also reminds me that sometimes the heart still needs to learn how to open one more time, even after disappointment, even after heartbreak, even after believing you may never feel something this deeply again. And maybe somewhere during a very quiet moment, this person is sitting there thinking about Pisces in the same way Pisces once thought about them. Some emotions just need more time before they fully find their name, and maybe that's why certain connections stay with us for such a long time. Not because they were perfect, but because they touch the most honest parts of who we really are. And honestly, I'm a little curious. Have you ever experienced a connection where, even after a long silence, your heart never fully forgot them? And if readings like this bring you comfort somehow, maybe stay with me for future readings too. But for now, just let these emotions settle quietly for a moment. Because sometimes the things left unsaid become the feelings that stay with us the longest.